Hello, welcome to Truths Applied here, Hagerman Baptist Church. I'm Pastor Dave Peters. Sunday we were talking about heaven, and it was a great time. We got back together. For the first time in 2 months, we were able to assemble together. Some of you were able to join us and some not, and that's okay. But we talked about heaven being the ultimate reunion. We had a reunion Sunday of sorts. I think there was 42 maybe, and so it was a far less number than normal, but it was great to see those 42 people. It was really hard not to hug and shake hands, but it was great to be together. But it reminded us of heaven. We went through John chapter 14, verses 1 through 6. If you haven't heard that message yet, you really ought to go back to YouTube and listen to that. But these are some truths applied from that message. So as a follow-up to that, some application that we can take from that. And, when I was a kid, there used to be a phrase. I haven't heard it for a long time. There used to be a phrase out there, "You're so heavenly minded that you're of no earthly good." And I always thought about that. And I didn't buy it then. I don't buy it now. I just don't believe that. That the more heavenly minded you are, the less earthly good you are? I don't think so. I think it's quite the opposite. I think it's when you are heavenly minded that you're especially suited to be earthly good. And so I want to challenge that a little bit. And I want to think this morning, how could a heavenly mindset improve your service to the Lord here on earth? And I think of 3 ways this morning that would be true. Here's just some things to mention. First of all, I think it makes your focus on the eternal and not on the temporal. And that's where our focus needs to be. When our focus is on eternal things, we're not nearly as concerned with our temporary concerns. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 4:18, "While we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal." When we have a heavenly mindset, we're focused on the eternal things and those things that really matter, not in the things that are going to change like the wind and be here today, not be here tomorrow. We'll be focused on eternal things. Sunday we used an illustration of the 19th century rabbi and was joined there by a visitor from the U.S. and said, "Where is all your furniture?" And the rabbi switched it around and says, "Well, where's yours?" And he said, "Well, I'm just passing through here." And the rabbi said, "So am I." And I think that really gets to the heart of the issue. When we are heavenly minded, we're not so concerned about the things of today. And our focus can be on the things of the Lord rather than the temporal concerns. So, first of all, an eternal focus instead of a temporary focus. But here's another one. Secondly, we need to be satisfied with what we have in light of what we will have forever. We need to be satisfied with what we have. Yeah, I like the old song, "I've Got a Mansion." And the first verse says this, "I'm satisfied with just a cottage below, a little silver and a little gold, but in that city where the ransomed will shine, I want a gold one that's silver lined." We can be satisfied with what we have below when we think of what we will have above. And when we have a heavenly mindset, we're satisfied. Now, we're always to be satisfied with what we have, but never to be satisfied with who we are, right? There's a satisfaction that needs to be. Paul says in Philippians 4 that no matter what state I am in, therewith to be content. We're to be content. Contentment with godliness is great gain, Paul tells Timothy. So there is a contentment that comes, not content with who we are, though. In other words, where we are spiritually, we're never to be content. We're always to be aspiring. We're always to be growing. We're always to be desiring a holiness in our life that doesn't exist today. But we are to be content with what we have. Now, to go along with that, Paul told husbands in Ephesians 5, verse 25 through 27. Let me read that to you. He says, "Husbands, Love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So if that's true, if Christ becomes the groom of the bride, the church, us, he is trying to present them holy to the Lord when they get to heaven. Well, let's cooperate with what Christ is trying to do for us then. It's by the washing of the water of the Word of God that we focus on the Word and we grow in our godliness, that we would be more presentable to God when we get to heaven. And so we should never be satisfied with who we are, but we are to be satisfied with what we have. Thirdly, as good as heaven is and will be for us, how many people do we know here on earth that will not join us in heaven? And that thought, that heavenly minded thought, should really get a hold of us and help us to understand that there are people around us every day that we see that we will not see in heaven. We should be so burdened for them. You know, I have a son-in-law. Many of you know Pastor Adam Stanley, who is our associate here for 10 years. He is Raiders crazy. I mean, he is such a fan of the Raiders, to the point that he's so convinced that they are the best in the NFL that, well, maybe they're not. He knows that they're not. But anyway, he just is so convinced that they're the team to follow and the team to watch that he is convincing other people. I know that because he's convinced my daughter Kendra to be a Raiders supporter of all things. Now, if this guy can be so enamored with a team that convinces other people to follow the Raiders, how much more should we be a supporter of Jesus Christ and be so convinced of heaven that we would also try to convince others that they should follow Christ and to be a follower of his. We have heaven as our home. Think about it. How much can you improve on of having heaven as your home? We should be so satisfied with what God has done that everything else seems silly to us. That all of our other interests, all of our other illusions, that they would all be faded away in the glory of thinking about heaven. You know, so may we be so heavenly minded that we would be of really good earthly good. May that be a reminder to you as you apply these truths. May you dig deep in the Word and find it to be satisfying as nothing else is. So I'll say so long to these truths applied for this edition. We'll see you next week. Thanks.